think you can credibly lead a government?
Would you like to tell me why you don't think I can?
All eyes have now turned to Jacinda Ardern.
Step up to the plate or watch your party die.
We will remain relentlessly positive. That is who we are as New Zealanders.
No one thought it was plausible that we could win.
In the end, we chose the New Labour Party.
I think I have natural levels of anxiety for someone who's 37 years old and who's also pregnant. Every time I got on a plane, I would look out a window and I would think, from that mountain to that river, that is my responsibility.
Oh, well, this is normal.
I have 3 years to do as much as we can.
But in the back of my mind, I thought, how am I going to do this with a baby?
I just feel sorry for myself listening to that because I just have no idea what's coming. Absolutely no idea.
There were two groups on the island, those who were evacuated and those close to the eruption.
We only have 6 cases at the moment.
This can only be described as a terrorist attack. Crises make governments and they break governments.
If things went wrong, it was my job to fix it.
I was 14 years old when someone first used the term imposter syndrome.
And it was just like something clicked. I just had a bit of a fear that I shouldn't be there. It's hard to switch on the news some days and just think the world is a dumpster fire. How do we shine a light on the humanity I know is still there?
You can be anxious, sensitive, kind. You can be a mother, a nerd, a crier. You can be all of these things. And you can lead just like me.
Hi, I'm Chuck Braverman. This is another edition of Westdoc, and today we have two fabulously talented women who have co-directed a feature documentary called Prime Minister, which is actually pretty sensational. I just watched it for the second time today, and I'm going to highly recommend it. And the directors are Michelle Walshe and Lindsay Oots. Let's say hi to them right now. Hi, ladies. How are you?
Hi. Thank you for having us.
It's my pleasure. I always ask at the beginning of this broadcast, where are you and what city? Michelle, where are you?
I'm currently sitting in Auckland, New Zealand, on a grey day. We've just come into winter on Wednesday morning, so I'm ahead of you in time.
I know, but you're only in the morning. It's as we record this, it's 1:39 here in LA. What time is it there in Auckland?
It is 8:39.
Oh my goodness. And Lindsay, where are you?
I'm in Los Angeles. It's also kind of cloudy here today. And yeah.
So I actually know Auckland, Michelle. I've been there. I spent a month there directing a show, I don't know how many years ago now, 25 years ago, called Hercules.
No way. So this that is incredible, because I know you have a very extensive film background. But my husband, who was one of the cinematographers and a producer on the film, he used to work on Hercules and Xena many years ago. He started out in lighting. So isn't that funny?
It's great. You know, it's funny. I watched the film a couple of weeks ago and really enjoyed it. And then I thought, well, I better, prep myself again and watch it. And watching it for the second time today was like seeing it for the first time again, because I saw so much and I enjoyed it. And it was a roller coaster, emotional ride for the young woman who became the Prime Minister of New Zealand when she was, I think 37 years old. And oops, by the way, I'm expecting a baby, which was a great, if you wrote that in a movie, they would say, no, you can't do that, right?
That's a really good point.
How did this movie come about? How did you just get access, decide to do it? And did somebody say you're crazy? You're not going to be able to do that, or what?
Well, I'll just jump in here if you don't mind, Lindsay. We were very lucky before Jacinda was Prime Minister. we had seen and observed her up close as this remarkable leader. And in fact, I remember my husband, Leon, who is a cinematographer and producer on the film, saying very early on, he's like, God, this woman's amazing. We should do a documentary on her one day, and it's just one of those things we're often saying, like, oh, that's a great idea. As documentarians, as you all know, you're often looking for stories everywhere. And so she was very refreshing to us back then. Whilst we'd had females in leadership before, we'd never seen something like Jacinda, where she was young and optimistic and empathetic and leading unapologetically. And then, of course, she got into power, and we were very lucky that we were allowed to. At that time, we were doing some work on her labor campaigns. My husband Leon was filming on the road with her, and I guess we were just there. Leon built an amazing relationship with Jacinda, a lot of trust. And before you knew it, we were up close and personal to this extraordinary story. Of course, we didn't know what was going to roll out. We just knew she felt really different and really special.
And so the film, though, she was prime minister for how many years?
5 and a bit.
And you followed her for a total of maybe 7 years, I think. But so when you started, did you think, oh, well, we'll shoot for a couple of weeks and wrap it up and finish, or did you have
Jacinda would never have entertained making a documentary while she was in power. I think, as storytellers by nature, we rolled, Leon rolled, and we just thought, well, we'll bank footage and, who knows? And so it wasn't until much later, and in fact, it wasn't until she was out of office that she entertained a conversation about turning it into a documentary. And of course, Clark, her husband, who's also a filmmaker, was capturing this for himself and for family reasons and for history. She's, as we talk about, she's a massive fan and lover of history. So we were just all independently collecting footage, and then we had the conversation when she finished. Hey, this story feels really important and really special. And that's when we really kicked off, and Madison Wells came on board. We were very lucky to bring Lindsay on before we had done any master interviews. So that was the process of the documentary being made.
Well, that's pretty surprising and shocking that you had 5 or 6 years of video before you said, maybe we should make a film. But are you shooting like 6 or 7 other things that you don't know whether they're going to be a film?
You know what? To be honest, yes, often we are filming bits and pieces. We have another 3 productions going on of filming that we're just observing. That's the nature of follow docs. Sometimes you follow things and the story doesn't unfold as a story that makes sense for a documentary, and maybe it turns into a podcast or something else. I mean, this exceeded all of our expectations, but we were really, again, you have to understand, she's running a country. She's not having conversations about making documentaries. So we're just quietly, holding footage in the background. And
how did Lindsay get involved with this?
Lindsay can tell this story.
So when the New Zealand team brought the project to the States for financing, that's a whole journey unto itself. And when Madison Wells came on board, that's when I got a call from Gigi, who's our financier and producer on the film, and she was familiar with my work. And that was when I found out that there had been some footage recorded behind the scenes of Jacinda's time in office. And as you can imagine, my head exploded because I was super familiar with who she was. I had been watching her for years. First, when she passed the gun legislation after the terrible terrorist attack in Christchurch, I took notice, of course, as an American woman and mother who has 2 young kids. That was put her on the radar for me for sure. And then during the pandemic, I was tuning into her COVID briefings just out of, a desire for science-based leadership. And So I was really taken with her. So when I got a phone call that there was footage that existed behind the scenes, I really kind of lost my mind, because there's no, I had just never heard of a world leader being captured with that kind of intimacy. And I think one of the first clips that I saw was the breastfeeding struggles that she was having in New York City. And I had just given birth to my second child and was going through similar challenges. So the footage really resonated with me. And that's when I came on board. But, it was a series of getting to know each other with the New Zealand team and making sure that there was a kind of alchemy between all of us, that we felt we could, join two teams together, two countries, and really see this film over the finish line.
So how is it bringing footage to the States to get financing? That seems rather awkward.
Well, it's an interesting process. We could have absolutely made this film. We're a production company ourselves, and we could have made the film. But it was really important to us that we had an American perspective, or at least a global perspective, that was beyond New Zealand. I'm Australian, but I've lived here for 20 years, and I was actually in New York for a couple of years during Jacinda's prime ministership, and it was the outside perspective was really important for us to contextualize how different her leadership was and what resonated outside of these shores. Otherwise, you can be in a bit of a vacuum here. So for us, it was a really exciting opportunity to bring on Lindsay, who had a really different connection to Jacinda. It was very powerful, but wasn't because she was from here. So yeah, it was a beautiful experience having a team come on and see what was the footage that we had, what Clark had done, and it's a once in a lifetime film. Lindsay and I talk about this. When do you come across a world leader who is open and willing to share warts and all of their story up close and personal during some of the biggest crises in our time? I just can't imagine where and how that would happen again. So it was really exciting to see Lindsay's reaction and have all her fresh ideas come into the mix.
Well, ironically, the film is even more relevant today with what's going on in our country, I think, as a contrast to how it could be done.
I had the very best scientific advice, the best public health advice, great ministers, but it still sat squarely on me.
I'm going to go and have an early night. Be nice to see you sometime.
Yep.
Early start again in the morning.
Yeah.
I just need to focus on the evidence and the science and the modelling and the right thing to do. This is sitting between me and going to sleep now. This and you. So.
Are you fake carrying washing around the room?
You came here with this footage, and did you say, well, we've been filming oh, by the way, we have 5 years inside the most intimate quarters, the most intimate scenes, and of behind the scenes running the country? Or, I mean, I'm still sort of flabbergasted by that, to think that you came to another country to get financing about the Prime Minister in New Zealand. And here's an Aussie and an American, right?
Well, Chuck, you work in documentary. You know how hard it is to get these projects financed.
Well, that's why I'm saying I do know how hard it is to get finance. And so let's just skip to distribution for a minute. What's the distribution plan for the moment?
Yeah, so I can take that. we premiered at Sundance about 4 months ago, and it's taken some time for the deal to close, but we are very, very fortunate that 3 incredible companies came on board Magnolia to release the film theatrically, which is happening this coming week. So June 13th, Friday, June 13th, the film opens nationwide. And there's a preview screening on the 8th that will have a live Q&A with Jacinda and Abby Phillips from CNN. So it was Magnolia for theatrical, and then it'll go to HBO for a window, and then it'll go to CNN.
Wow, that's fabulous. Do you know the dates for television, for streaming? CNN? Or?
I'm not sure we've gotten the exact dates yet.
Not confirmed yet.
But there's also... We also have worldwide distribution as well, which I don't think has been announced yet. But
is that somebody else, or is that one of the above?
Are we? I don't know, Michelle, if we're supposed to. If that's
when in doubt, I don't say.
When in doubt, yes, it should be announced soon. The plan.
What about locally in New Zealand? Has it run there?
No, but it's playing at the New Zealand International Film Festival, which is very exciting for us to show it here. I'm actually going to Sydney next week. It's playing at a big screening in Sydney, and which is very exciting because a lot of my family are in Australia. So, whereas it's obviously at Sundance, I haven't had any people in my own circles see the film. It's going to be very exciting to see how it's received here. So that's going to be a real highlight for me in my career for sure.
What was Jacinda's reaction seeing the film?
Jacinda's reaction seeing the film? Well, first, I would like to say that she was an incredible subject. She really understood that she needed to give us space to work and craft this movie. So that was incredible. I think we showed her a cut of the film around the time we submitted to Sundance. And her reaction was, as you can imagine, I'm sure there's moments of the film that are really hard for her to both relive and watch. Just, it's hard to see yourself in difficult moments, but she understood that those moments were important to telling, the most dynamic, most honest story about what she went through. And I think she feels it's a really honest portrayal of her experience. And, as a documentary filmmaker, that's the best, that's the best thing that that's the thing you want your subject to feel, is that you made an honest film.
I didn't realize that it's going to be on HBO and CNN, and I just think that's fabulous. I think that's wonderful. And where is she now? Is she still in the States?
Yeah, she's currently in Boston. She's been doing a fellowship at Harvard, but she's, I think she's got, I think her diary is very booked with trying to help support global initiatives that are making hopefully the planet and people a better place. But yeah, she has a very full diary.
What was the post process between New Zealand and the United States and who knows what else?
Yeah, well, we had a lot of footage to begin with, all this beautiful material that was captured by these incredible filmmakers in New Zealand. And from there, we kind of had to build the film around it. Michelle and I felt very strongly that Jacinda's voice should kind of anchor us in the movie, that we wanted to create a feeling like you're sitting next to her and she's telling you a story. So getting those key, I even hesitate to call them master interviews, because Michelle and I were very much on the same page about wanting them to feel organic and kind of verite in style. So, one camera's not on a tripod, it has motion, it makes you feel like you're in the room with her. We wanted her to tell us the story of her time in office. So it was important for us to go to Boston and get those interviews. But in addition to that, we had this incredible archive of audio diaries that were conducted when she was in office. It was a part of an oral history project, and I think in total there were about 40 hours of those audio diaries. So Michelle and I really went through those and found the moments that we felt were really strong and really compelling emotionally. And we kind of structured our interviews around that. As you see in the movie, she's listening back to those audio diaries. One thing that was important to Michelle and I was that she not listen to them until we shoot with her. So we asked her, she was writing a book at the time, so she was in this very contemplative state. And she was eager to re-listen to those audio diaries. But we asked her not to do it until we were there with the camera. So what you see in the movie, her hearing herself for the first time, say 4 years ago, that's genuinely, that's a genuine moment of her being brought back in. And we thought, just from a storytelling perspective, that would be a really interesting way to kind of glue the whole film together.
And when you think about it, when do you get a world leader to watch them live reflecting on really significant, momentous events? The other thing to mention is those diaries weren't supposed to be released until after she died. She did those diaries with the sense that she did them with complete honesty and very candidly, not expecting them to be released until after she died, and we got access to them. So that was so remarkable, watching her listen back and reflect on something that she never expected to listen back to in her lifetime. So that's another one of the gifts of the film.
And it's not like nothing happened in the 5 years where she was prime minister. I mean, I'm just looking, I wrote down a couple of things. There was the Christchurch mosque shooting massacre where I think 50 people were killed. She was responsible, beside being compassionate, responsible for changing the gun laws and banning automatic weapons and more. I was surprised that abortion was apparently not accessible or legal in New Zealand, and she changed that. So abortion is now legal, is that right?
Yeah, no longer a criminal offense, yeah.
Right. And then they had a little volcano erupt and killing a bunch of people. And then something called COVID happened that shut down the country. And I'm sure there's probably a half a dozen other things that I'm missing here. But the thing about her that was so great, she seemed to always want to be empathetic and think about the people and what's best for the people and not politics, I mean, that's what made her, I think, such a terrific leader. When did CNN and HBO and Magnolia come on board? At what process? Was it before or after Sundance?
After Sundance.
So the film was basically financed independently, if that's the right word?
Yeah, we financed it until we went to Madison Wells, and then they became the financiers for the finishing of the film and the film in its entirety.
Well, that's good to hear. And what are you guys working on next?
Oh, you go first, Lindsay. We've got a few on the boil.
Yeah, I have a number of projects I'm developing and one that I'm shooting right now. But I can't quite talk about it right now. It's kind of a top secret project, but it's a similar kind of follow doc. And like Michelle mentioned earlier, you never know where these projects are going to take you. So we'll see.
That's the challenge with these follow docs. We often can't talk about them, which is a challenge. But I think, we as documentarians, we have an incredible, what an incredible career or gift that we're able to tell stories that hopefully, like we say, make the people and planet better in some way. And I think after this film and seeing the impact, even just in the theaters that we saw, we'll never understand the ripple effects of any film we make, but I am just absolutely determined to keep telling stories that shine light on humanity, that remind us, I have this deep belief that humans are inherently very good, and we need to see more of that and be reminded of that, because it's very easy to look for the bad. And some of the projects I'm working on are in that vein as well.
Was it challenging? I mean, let's start out with the premise. You have a really terrific film. A big but, though. The but is it's about what happened in New Zealand from the American point of view, right? And we, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we, the United States, are pretty insular, in terms of, well, if it didn't happen here, do we care about it? Did it really even happen? And even Americans aren't real big on watching foreign films with subtitles. That's a challenge in itself, right? So I just wonder, was that a struggle? And did you hear that ever? Oh, it's the Prime Minister of New Zealand, and, and that's an issue in terms of distribution.
You can talk to that, but we definitely felt some of that when we were first looking for finance for the film. People wondered if it would be relevant. I think we saw enormous relevancy because leadership, showing a different style of leadership outside of the political spectrum, just across the board, is incredibly refreshing and interesting, let alone the access we had. But Lindsay, this is one for you, I think. Were you concerned about that?
I was never concerned about that because her story, as I mentioned before, as a young mother, when I saw her bring her baby to the UN, that was deeply moving for me. It was deeply moving for women everywhere because we're supposed to kind of hide our private lives, right? We're supposed to create this illusion that we can do it all. But the truth is, if you have an ambitious career and you have children, you can't do it all. And women shouldn't be asked to do it all. They need support. I have a very modern, I guess call it modern relationship where my husband does, he does the laundry, he grocery shops, he does these things that I guess are traditionally thought of as things that women do. But that's not at all how our relationship works. And I think there's a lot of women out there that have super supportive husbands that are behind the scenes, helping them have their careers and be mothers. And so it was really important to us that this film was a portrait of that as well. What does it look like to be in a real partnership with somebody? And I think, you can see how much Clark does behind the scenes to support Jacinda. And that was one of the many themes that I think transcends politics, right? The story of motherhood, the story of partnership, the story of, believing in yourself, putting yourself out there, doing things you don't think you could do, and then finding that you're quite good at them. These are all big themes that go beyond borders. And we felt that I always felt that this film was going to resonate worldwide. And I do think it's meeting the moment right now because people are desperate for some light and some love and some hope that there's a better way forward.
Well, I certainly hope you're right. We certainly need a better example on how to govern.
Well, I would also like to say that when we were making the film, I have an almost 11-year-old daughter, and it was very important to me that she could follow the movie and stay with it because our dream is that, women can bring their young children to the theaters to watch this film and offer another version of leadership.
Well, part of the joy of the film was seeing the little girl grow from being a little teeny baby bundle to being, a walking, talking little girl who's charming.
There's some beautiful moments in the film. I think the editors did such a fantastic job where we're right in the middle of the gun legislation and we cut back out and see Neve watching the TV and you're reminded that Jacinda's a mother with a baby at home and achieving that. And I think those vehicles to link her personal and her work and private life were really special in the film. But you're right, that was a joy having the chronology showing through their daughter Neve growing up.
Yeah, whenever you have a kid growing up on screen, it's a very useful signpost. It's a good way to anchor you in time and space. So
you don't have to put up a card that says 2 years later.
No, exactly. Time is moving forward because Neve is getting older.
The challenge for us was just the abundance of incredible footage. Hey, Lindsay, the first block cut was like 17 hours, and then it was 5, and then it was 7, then it was 3, then it was 4, this sort of push and pull. And I think there's still a few things that were like, I wish we had a bit more time to show it all.
Because the audience of this web series is a lot of filmmakers, I always ask what the budget is or the budget area. If you can give me a clue or a zip code, rough idea of what kind of budget went into making this film over 7 years.
Michelle? Like, it would be in the range of a normal documentary. It was not excessive at all. I think documentaries, they have they're a tricky model. They're a tricky business model because they don't go into tens of thousands of cinemas and sell out. I think actually statistically something like 2% of revenue goes to doc. That's an old stat, so I'm sorry if that's not updated. 2% of box office revenue is doc. So you have to be very careful with spending, and that's tough over a long period of time. We don't get into documentaries to make money, that is for sure. That's not why we do it. What resonated for you, Chuck, in the film? What was your favorite moment?
I think the intimacy inside, behind the curtain, seeing and how human she is, and her the fun, upbeat, mostly relationship with her husband, and how difficult it was. And towards the end, how she said she didn't have enough gas in the tank or something to that. Like, if there's another crisis that comes up, she didn't feel like she could. She was always worried what was behind her, just the cloud behind her, and that was very telling, And she's so likable, and it makes you want to jump on a plane and go to Harvard and go see some of her lectures or something, whatever she's doing there. I'm not sure.
She's very funny, right, too. She's funny. A wickedly sharp wit. She's very funny.
Oh, the funny moment is when she announces her pregnancy and somebody from the press or somewhere says, and when do you expect to get married? And she turns around to her husband and says, Clark? Or and he was like a deer in the headlights, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time out and getting up early in the morning in Auckland and late in the afternoon in Los Angeles. I appreciate you coming on Westdoc, and I wish you guys the best of luck, and I hope the film is very, very successful.
Thanks.
Thank you for having us.
And thanks for taking the time to watch it, Chuck. It's been really lovely speaking with you.
Yeah.
Watch it. He watched it twice.